Yo, what's up? Welcome to episode 28, the Peon podcast, the first episode of 2024. And we're starting off with a banger. Chef Andrew Clarke from ACME Fire Cult in London and from Skull Sessions podcast, the conversation I didn't know I needed. But before we get into that, I'll say sorry for the delay in podcasts. Life's been kicking my ass lately. Last year was really rough for me personally, and but then professionally everything really sort of went fantastically, which was unexpected. I was expecting the year to be focused on making my personal life better and dedicating it to people, and then my fucking work life just took over. It was the exact opposite of what I wanted. But life is what it is, and when one thing's up, then others down. And so when I took that trip to Asia at the end of that last year, that's when I did my last actual interview with Sham Mazumdar, who you can listen to. And then I did a bunch of podcasts on my Patreon, patreon.com/Peon Magazine. If you want to hear all those about my trip through Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. So those are not public, but I did a lot of podcasting while I was there. But this is my first interview that I did since October of last year. And as I said, I didn't know I needed it until I started talking to Andrew. And it's amazing that was the first conversation that I had this year. I tried to start off the year on a positive note, but started the year off by just severing my finger in fucking half. And I'm just now getting feeling back into it. It's healed on the surface, but I can feel the nerves are not healed in there. It's like, I don't even know if I'm going to have full feeling in my finger. We'll see how long it takes to get that back. I mean, it's already got a weird scar to it. My fingers look really strange. Looks very different. My fingerprints are not the same. So, but anyway, so I didn't really get to start the year as I would have liked. Because of my finger, I couldn't really do the things like working out or things I really wanted to do. And then I sort of had a tough time finding interviews in the early half of the year. And then all of a sudden, just recently, people have been responding to me a lot more. So I've been getting a lot more interviews. And as a quick side note, because kitchen life is so busy for me right now and taking up a lot of my time, I am looking for either like a producer or somebody to help me find people to interview. So if you are interested or somebody who might be, send them my way. Anyway, Andrew Clarke, like I said, I just contacted him, and actually, interestingly enough, I contacted him years ago, probably during the pandemic, about writing an article for Peon back in the day, and he didn't respond. And hearing what he has to say in this podcast, I understand now why he didn't respond. He was going through his own shit, and the last thing he needed was to write an article for some guy in a different country with an unheard of magazine. And that post was him openly talking about his depression and his drug addiction and how he sort of got through it. And that's mainly what this podcast is about. He's a guy who I really identify with in more ways than one, not just in the fact that he is so open about his depression, but also in the way that he sort of came up in kitchens and the work that he does on himself, the work that he does on his personal life and his mental stability. And I really identify with that. I didn't know any of this before I started talking to him. I mean, he talks about trying to be a musician when he was younger and just sort of falling into kitchens and not being happy with that direction, which is something that happened to me exactly. And I don't think I really came to terms with or was grateful for the direction that my life was taking and just accepting that direction until just recently, like he did as well, And I left kitchens because I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to go more in that direction. And I failed horribly at that. And I was miserable because of it. And I was really, really, really unhappy with the fact that I had to be in kitchens. Like that's the mentality I had to some degree. But also, really attracted to kitchens at the same time. So, but I think a lot of my unhappiness and depression at that time when I was younger is sort of the same thing that Chef Andrew Clarke was going through, which is, being unhappy with your situation and wanting to be somewhere else, and, using drugs and the availability of drugs and booze in kitchens to sort of mask that discomfort, and falling into a cycle of failure, which is definitely what I did, like feeling like you're a failure and then hating yourself for it, and then, drinking because you hate your life, and then getting up and doing it again, and like this cycle of self-hate and failure, and you're failing because you think you're failing, and then you're coping with it with booze, and then you feel like shit the next day because that's what you're used to, and then that cycle just keeps going and going and going and going. And it's it's a daily struggle. I think a lot of people in the industry feel that struggle as well. You're not happy with the restaurant you're in, you're not happy with your life, you're not happy with your living situation, all this kind of shit. And being in kitchens just cycles back into it, and whether you have a shitty day or a good day, it all just happens. So it was really refreshing to hear Chef Clarke talk about that. I wasn't expecting him to say any of that stuff. It was just a really unexpected conversation that really keyed into a lot of shit I'm dealing with right now. It's also him talking a lot about being grateful in kitchens is the same thing that I'm also going through right now. Being grateful and happy with what you recognized before as failure has led you to in a new direction. Being grateful for that new direction, and understanding that the new direction is not failure from unfulfilled dreams. It's just a different direction, and you should be happy with where that failure led you. Yeah, I'm really grateful for that. Where I'm at right now, it's not anywhere near where I thought I was going to be, but I'm here, and I'm just trying to embrace it. I'm healthier in some ways because of that, and feel more comfortable professionally because of that. But then on the other end, the personal stuff has definitely suffered. So it's, it's a balancing act. We talk about using work as a way to get you through those moments of depression, and just put your head down and do the work, hoping that eventually it'll get easier. And it does work to some extent, but at the same time, the rest of your life is suffering. And because of that, you lose a lot in your personal life and in your health. You know what I mean? Like not eating properly, not getting inspiration to continue working, all that kind of stuff. So it's a double-edged sword, it's not really something that I deeply thought about this year until I talked to Chef Andrew Clarke, and he has some really great perspective on it, So it definitely got me thinking about a lot of that stuff, and sort of spent the end of last year a little bit lost after that trip through Asia, what they call it, like reverse cultural shock. Like I came back and I just was kind of in a daze. It's so hard to explain. In like almost like jet lag for like a month or two, feeling like really out of it and kind of lost, not sure where to go. And podcasting again, really, talking to these people, and not podcasting. I don't really give a fuck about podcasting. It's talking to these people and getting these sort of conversations out to people who actually appreciate it and want to hear. Someone like myself who needs to hear this kind of stuff is really, as we talk about in this podcast, doing the work, as Andrew says, like, what are your pillars? And I think in my case, this definitely is, man. If I don't do these interviews, I start to get a little lost. I get antsy. I start to feel like a piece of shit again, but man, the second I start doing it, I feel better. I feel more fulfilled. I feel there's some sort of direction, even though I don't really care what the direction is or where it's going, or even if it is going somewhere. It just is, Yeah. As Andrew says, like letting other people inspire you, and that way it's all sort of off your shoulders. You're not driving the boat. It's just letting it happen to you. And I feel like that's what these podcasts are. I'm just talking to people, and it's great to hear other people's stories. And it really feels like it relieves a lot of the pressure that I put on myself to perform, to do better, to create all this kind of stuff. and not having to do that stuff alone really feels great. And that's the whole reason I just do this podcast, I think, amongst other reasons. I don't know. I feel like I'm fucking babbling. But anyway, I'll say, this was definitely a podcast that didn't know I needed, and that I didn't know I wanted to start the year off with. But I hope it does the same thing for you as it did for me. Chef Andrew Clarke, for as heavy as the topics that we talk about, for as heavy as his work is, his mental work, he's a really lighthearted guy, you know? And I hope you really enjoy this conversation, and I hope you get as much out of it as I did. Anyway, so as I said at the beginning, Chef Andrew Clarke is the chef and one of the owners of ACME Fire Cult in London, and also a really inspiring chef in the field, who's bridging the gap between self-help and cooking and being a badass chef, as well as a podcaster. Like I said, his podcast Skull Sessions can be found everywhere. I don't know what else to say. I got some new merch up. Just instantly go from a deep conversation to plug in some merch you can buy. Fuck it. You can get some new merch at the store, peonmagazine.com/store. It's also in the description below. Hope you're doing well. Hope you got a good year ahead. I got some big things coming up, and hopefully some big episodes. Stay tuned. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate you listening. And I hope you enjoy this interview with Chef Andrew Clarke. Later. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
No, absolute pleasure, of course.
How's the new year treating you so far?
Slow, which is nice. I mean,
Yeah.
Hospitality, it's pretty mad during December.
Yeah.
And normally I take January off. I haven't this year, but normally I would go and sit on a beach in India, in Goa.
Ooh. Nice.
And come back in February when it starts to, the nights are getting lighter again. This year I haven't. This year I said I'd be around for family a little bit more. And I've kept myself busy. I mean, while it's a slow start, I think it's also about, sowing all the seeds that you hope will bloom later on in the year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
I've got a few events coming up, which is good as well. So that through this month.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because, my restaurant, the majority of it is outdoors. So, England, London, it's cold and damp. And if I want people to come on Tuesday night to walk down the back streets of East London to get to, this car park where we've set up shop, I guess it's a time of year that concerns me the most, January and February. Once we're out the other side of that, mid-March, then, we don't have any problems really. And the place is mobbed in the summer.
Oh, that's great.
But it's just these 2 months that are kind of critical. So I'm just trying to, like I say, sow some good seeds and see what comes of it.
Yeah. So is it outside, or do you close during the January months, or you stay open and kind of brave the weather?
All year round.
Oh, damn. Okay.
And that's the thing is that because most of the restaurant is outside, we can't lose 60% of business during the winter months. So we have to cozy it up, lots of sheepskin, blankets, and, just do some really kind of comforting food during that time. And, it's good. A quiet night for us is still 100 covers. So that's not bad, really.
Oh, that's great. No, that's really good. Yeah, that's great. So how long ago did you get into food industry? Do you remember your first job in the food industry?
Well, it's about 25 years ago now. I was a musician. I still am. But I was.
What do you play?
Lots of instruments, mostly guitar.
Okay.
I've been playing guitar for 30 odd years.
Okay.
But I play harmonium, which is a little kind of pump organ.
Yeah. I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I play that. I play various percussion instruments, drums, but mostly guitar.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, I wanted to be. I always thought I was going to travel the world, touring with my band, being a rock star, whatever.
Yeah.
And a sudden turn of events happened, whereas I found myself in a kitchen, and I
Wait, what was this? What was this sudden turn of events? Was you just needed a job or?
no, I was looking at life in prison.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Just a standard, uh, misdemeanor.
Shit. Okay.
Yeah, so
Oh
I
my
was looking
God.
at life in prison, and luckily, I was found not guilty on both charges, but I had to go into a kitchen to pay for my music. Uh, I had to pay for my kind of legal costs and bits and pieces,
Yeah.
kind of. But I had to jump into a kitchen. I had to earn some money after that court case, and yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it.
How
I
old were
found.
you?
Sorry, how old?
How old were you? Yeah.
20,
20.
20,
Okay.
46 now. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it was a strange one. I thought I kind of failed all my exams thinking I was going to be this rock star. And then, but one of the things I was always good at as a kid was cooking. I have a very big appetite. I loved cooking.
Mhm.
And I figured if I don't have any qualifications to get a regular job like everyone else, let's see if a kitchen would
Yeah.
pick me up. And they did. But it's definitely not a place, if you've got dreams or aspirations to do anything else, as I did with music, it's
Yeah.
definitely not a place to go because it's just so consuming. And there I was.
Did you start somewhere specific, like on the bottom, or did you start cooking right away? Like, did you start with dishes or anything like that?
No, I worked. It was a pizza restaurant.
Oh, so you went straight
So
to cooking.
straight into service.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, it was basic. I worked the pizza ovens. I, made sure things didn't burn. I spun some pizzas. I put tomato sauce on it.
Yeah.
It was basic, but it was fast paced, big volume. I think the first few days I had nightmares about the fucking ticket machine,
Yeah, of
just
course.
spewing
Yeah.
out tickets and not being able to keep up and drowning in them. Um,
Yeah. It's classic. That's the
yeah.
classic dream. Yeah.
So that was there. That took a little while to settle in. I really, to
Do
cut a
you
long
like
story
it?
short, in that sense, is that
Yeah.
I quickly realised that even though I didn't want to be a chef, I was better than that job. So I went to another pizza restaurant, which things were more handmade there, and it had a wood-fired oven this time. And I was
Okay.
there for a few more months, and I thought, look, I don't want to be a chef, but I'm better than this. So I kept doing that for about a year, jumping around places until
All pizza places?
no, it's two pizza places. There was a fine dining place, very very French. I think it took about probably I was bouncing around for about a year, 18 months, until I found a place that you know everything was made on site. There was butchery, fish butchery. We'd go to the markets every week. There was a
Wow.
real understanding of the provenance of ingredient. The ingredients were amazing, and all the chefs I was working with just had such great training. Some of them were ex Marco Pierre White, and I found myself learning. I wasn't kind of learning all the sections and then just treading water. It was like
Yeah.
every day there was something new to learn,
Yeah.
and that was it. That was the place that really captivated me. I stayed there 6 years, and I think it was only about 3 or 4 years into that I was running it and realised that I'm not going to be a musician anymore.
What place was that?
It was called the Swan in West Malling.
Uh-huh.
Still going, but a very, very different model now. It's a very decent restaurant in Kent, in the southeast of England. But
Mhm.
yeah, back then, I kind of pushed my boss to listen to me when I took over as head chef, or quite a even when I was like sous chef, but really wanting to take that head chef title. I thought
Mhm.
the food we'd been doing was Spanish, Italian, and we was in this beautiful old 16th century coaching in a quintessential little British town, small town,
Mhm.
and the British food was having a bit of a comeback. You had St John, which was, a
Yeah. Oh, love
powerful
St. John.
restaurant.
Yeah.
Lots of
Yeah.
influence going on. But they'd only been open, I don't know, 5 or 10 years at the time. So I was hugely influenced by them, and there was a bunch of other places popping up. So I just kind of convinced my boss that really we should be a British restaurant and be, at the forefront of that movement. So we were, and it was great learning for myself, pushing myself to do food or dig out old recipes that hadn't really seen the light of day since before the Second World War.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
also, having a lot of fields and farms and places to grow and forage, and there were hunts so we could shoot stuff. So it wasn't that we were putting pressure on ourselves to try and do things, grow within a certain radius. It was just more that there was such a bounty around us. We didn't really need to go up to the market anymore or go further than, a
Oh, that's
couple of
amazing.
miles.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, what catches my eye about that is that you said within the span of about 4 years, if I heard you right,
Yeah.
you went from working as a pizza cook to being the chef of this restaurant. Like, do you remember at what point you decided like, oh, I don't think I'm going to be a musician anymore, or
Yeah.
at what point it kind of took over?
I think it definitely the Swan. I know I was there 6 years.
Do you
Probably
remember what was it
year and a-
about it that kind of like captivated you or sort of took over?
what captivated me? It was produce.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I was used to being busy, even if it was a pizza restaurant, even if it was the fine dining restaurant. I was
Mhm.
used to being busy. I liked long prep lists and hard work. I was never phased by that. I learned from other people's mistakes very quickly, so I wasn't I
That's
wasn't
a great as
shouting at
as a
myself.
cook. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But produce was the single thing. Yeah, I thought I knew it all arrogantly when I was a kid. When it came to food, I grew up with food very close to us as a family. My dad designed restaurants, so I thought
Oh,
I
wow.
food a
That's
little bit
cool.
more than most people. Do you know what I mean? And yet I was
Yeah.
constantly challenged with try this new ingredient and have that. And if I had mozzarella in the past, then I had some buffalo mozzarella, and it changed my life. And so it was definitely the ingredient, and not having the previous jobs where you ring up a fish supplier and you get salmon portions. No, this time I had to
Yeah.
go up to the market, get the salmon, then start butchering it and get it all set for the chefs for their service. And it just
Yeah.
brought me closer to the produce, closer to the suppliers and the markets.
Mhm.
And I've taken that, I mean, to a more extreme level now, but that's been the single factor of how I've shaped my career. I think is being very produce led, and I spend a lot of time sourcing the right ingredients to go on the plate.
That's insane. I can't imagine like 3 or 4 years. It's taken me so long to even get to where I am, and the fact that you did that in 4 years is incredible.
I think it's probably, if we think about the first year, 18 months of just jumping around, and then yeah, the Swan. I was there 3 years from CDP to sous chef, and
Mhm.
then yeah, probably the last 2 years. I didn't stay long as a sous chef. I went straight into head chef. So yeah, I think for 5 years I was sous chef and thinking, shit, yeah, I'm definitely not a musician anymore.
Did you feel bad about that in some way? I remember when I was like when I was young and I thought I was going to be a skateboarder, and then all of a sudden, your life takes this weird change. You're like, oh wait, I'm not doing that anymore. Did you feel some regret about that, or
A lot.
you just kind of let it happen?
No, a lot. It's kind of it had been I'd had mental health issues through my career, which was depression really,
Same. Yeah.
and I struggled with addiction with drink and cocaine, and so I linked it all back to just not being happy with where my life was and how it had turned out. It took me a long time and plenty of ayahuasca journeys to kind of make peace with my to make peace with my past, because cooking has been very fair to me. It's given me a lot, and I just masked the pain that I was going through with alcohol and drugs. And I was never really grateful for being a chef. I don't know what it was. It was, I was never comfortable with being a chef. I was good at what I did, and I'd like to think I am still. But I do have this thing now when as soon as my apron's off, that's it. I go and do other things, and I
Yeah.
almost compartmentalize my life. So I've got the
Mm.
chef Andrew Clarke. I do a lot of medicine work, so I do, and that's where I do a lot of my music. So I've got the musician Andrew Clarke, and a couple of other things. But it affected me for a long time. Definitely,
Mhm.
depression was hard, and it was a tough one to get through.
Yeah, I feel like that's something I've also come to recently, like being grateful. I sort of like felt very slighted by the fact that I was cooking and I had to go in this direction and I wasn't doing the art that I wanted to do and stuff. But the second you're just grateful for having a job that you enjoy, when a lot of people don't enjoy their jobs, and you get to create things and work with great produce and things like that. I mean, the second you start being grateful for that, it all changes. I feel.
It really does. I
Yeah.
completely. And I just probably didn't understand it at the time. I was angry. I was pissed off.
Yeah.
This life
Same.
changing event of
Yeah.
basically someone attacking me and
Oh
them
no.
coming off
Okay.
bad. I was angry with this fucking guy for attacking me. How dare you? Because that stopped me. It threw a spanner in the works for a long time.
Mhm.
I wasn't inspired to pick up the guitar. It sat in one of my cases for like 6 months, and that's kind of the period where I was jumping into a kitchen. So, but I had to
Yeah.
make peace with all that, and as soon as I did, I enjoy my work again. It's funny because even right up to the pandemic, I was still indifferent about opening another restaurant. I was just like, I'd got out my previous ones just before the world shut down. And then when that all happened, I was just like, you know what? I don't want to jump back into a kitchen. I'm not going to open a restaurant. I can be a consultant for other people, but I'm definitely not doing this again. And, some funny things happened. Firstly, I went on my own kind of medicine journey. And
Mhm.
that's when I started working with kind of spiritual communities and, medicine communities and doing my own inner work. But at the same time, I was also, like most people, locked down for ages and desperate to cook again because, I've kind of made my name for myself cooking over fire. Yet being locked
Yeah.
down for 3 months in a flat, I had no outlet for
No, wait.
that. so,
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
so so when the world started opening up again, there was a car park opposite where I lived, and I just got a load of frames and barbecues and things out of storage, set it all up there, and that's how my current restaurant, Acme Fire Cult, was born.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Just a need, like an outlet
Just it,
for
yeah, yeah.
cooking and fire. Yeah.
And
That's
we
that's
weren't we
that's probably the best way to do it.
It really was, and I fell in love with my craft again because I brought my head chef in. Well, the pair of us were doing it, but just using our names. He had a kind of full-time job working for the guy whose land it was that we were doing it in. So he was there on the day-to-day. I was doing a little bit of consultancy, and then I'd get down on in the evenings or on the weekends, and I wouldn't plate up. I wouldn't do any of the prep. I would just get straight on the grill and I would cook. And that was
Oh
it because
man.
I didn't have all the other stuff that's kind of wearing me out. The fact that I could just jump back on and cook, I was in my comfort zone. I was in my, well, more than that. I just felt like a pig in shit. I was happy again, my happy place.
Yeah. There's
So,
something about cooking over fire that's it's like it's very primal, but it's very zen. You can really get into a zone of like just you and the fire and the meat and the produce that you're working with. It's incredible. I love it. It's
yeah,
great.
like I said, I built my career around cooking over fire, but it is exactly what you said. It's just getting into that zone. I try and teach that to people, and I don't know if I always make sense to people, but you can cook. People can cook over fire. If you've got a bit of a clue about cooking, do you know what I mean? You're not going to put
Yeah.
things too close to a heat source, so you can move things around. Chefs are always fiddling about, so I can have people on our grills at work, and they kind of get it. But what I try and teach people is just kind of meditate with the coals on the fire. Just take a minute to just block out anything else, connect with it. And
Yeah.
when you become that fire and you understand it like that, then things become so much more instinctive. You tune into it so much better. And, you'll know when to put fuel on the fire. You'll know when to move things around and, when things are done just by looking at them. I love it. I just feel so I mean, it's part of my spiritual journey anyway, but, being so connected to the fire and thinking of service more as a meditation than actual work is fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Yeah, it definitely is. Instead of feeling like stressed or worried about it as like something that's looming over you, that's a pretty good perspective to
It's an
change.
experience, actually. I mean, that's maybe a way of looking at it. It's you're not working. You're just experiencing this, time with the fire, and then you're exhausted when it's finished. But it's that tuning in and connecting. It's amazing.
Now, let me ask you. You mentioned you were addicted to drugs like cocaine and alcohol. I've always been curious about, was that something that was going on in those kitchens, in those high end kitchens in England, or was that just something that was individual to you? Because from what I know about the experience in those high end kitchens, it looks insanely stressful. So I can only imagine that somebody needed something to release or just keep yourself going.
Do you know? I was probably doing cocaine before I even jumped in a kitchen, if I'm totally honest.
Oh, really?
It's very popular in the UK.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't know many people that haven't done it. It's like, you go to a pub, someone's got some. It's
just
for
everywhere,
me,
huh?
It's everywhere. And the accessibility of it all is even more so through restaurants. I would do services and, you have a bad service, you commiserate, you go to the bar. If you have a good service, you celebrate, you go to the bar. And it's roads led to the bar. And as soon as you're there, you have a beer, you have a shot, and then, someone brings a bag out. It was a way of feeling good. And like I said earlier on, probably masking the pain of, not doing the music. It was deep down. It wasn't something so obvious to me that that's what was happening, and I didn't understand why I was in this addictive cycle. I guess it was my way of kind of enjoying what I was doing as a chef, and if I had a great service, then that was it. Let's go out and take the troops out and blow off some steam.
Yeah. And then the other way as well, right? It's a terrible service. Let's go off some steam.
Fortunately, it didn't happen too often, but at the same time, it happened enough that you'd have to console yourself in some way.
Yeah. So you said you didn't get completely clean until the pandemic. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Or how did that end up resolving itself?
So back in 2015, towards the end, that's when depression kind of really hit me hard, and at the time it was suicidal depression.
Did you find that was that affecting your work in restaurants?
No, I think working in a restaurant at that time, I'd just taken over. I'd partnered up with a friend who had his existing restaurant, a chef called Jackson Boxer, who's one of my best pals at the time, and we had been talking about me joining his restaurant as a director, as a partner for a while, and we'd signed an agreement to do that just before things took a turn for the worst for me. And I guess the beneficial about this is that I had some responsibility. As long as I could get myself to work, and while I was there, I had my business partner and a sous chef. So there was 3 of us working. As long as I was there, I was distracted. It's when I was at home and things were racing around my head. You get in your head about stuff, and that's when the problems were there. So my solution was to work all the time, and I was doing 100+ hours a week. I was hardly eating anything, dropping weight really rapidly. But the interesting thing was, we started getting some big UK critics coming through the door when we'd made the announcement that I'd joined up. So Jay Rayner was the first, I think, to come through. Faye Mashler, AA Gill. We had in just a couple of weeks some of the biggest, or the biggest critics, and all of them gave very, very positive reviews. So it was that little thing that just kind of each week something came out. It was another little boost for me and it got me out the weeds.
Nice. Yeah. That's great.
And again, that was another point where I kind of fell back in love with my craft again, because really it was just me and my sous chef and then my business partner, the 3 of us, just cooking what we wanted to cook, cooking food we'd like to eat ourselves, not taking it too seriously, but just doing it for the love and for the fun of it. And while it took a while for that to really clear, I mean, years, I definitely got myself in a better place through 2016. So roll on to the pandemic. I'd kind of shaped my life up in various ways. I'd got more into plant medicines of different kinds, but ayahuasca had always been this one that I thought, that's where I really want to try this. I've been smoking DMT. I knew a lot about ayahuasca. I always thought you had to go to the jungle to do it. And
Yeah.
it was while we were locked down, a friend of mine said, I know someone serving medicine, just down in Essex. Should we go? So we jumped in my car and snuck out of the lockdown and ended up on a farm down in deepest Essex. And I had my first glass of medicine, and that was it. That was the kind of the start of my new life, really.
That experience like changed everything for you? Kind of opened you up?
Unbelievable. In one night, I stopped drinking. I stopped all the dark energy that had been trapped in me for 20 odd years just came out. I had no cravings for alcohol or cocaine. I can be around people drinking. In fact, I can have a glass of wine or a beer or even a whiskey or something, and I won't drink it all, but I don't have this kind of right, that's it. I'm I'm digging in for the night now, or any desire to just get cocaine, which was always the thing. I'd have a drink and then I'd want drugs. I don't have any. So, unlike being in AA for the rest of my life, it's just rewired something in my DNA. It's changed my relationship to alcohol. And I just choose not to drink. I can be around people doing it. I can be around people doing drugs. I just have no desire to do that myself. It released me from that.
That's really interesting. It's funny that most people consider it drugs, but it's not really a drug. But it's funny that that drugs is the thing that saved you from drugs.
I like to say that there's high frequency drugs and there's low frequency drugs.
That's good.
Even coffee's a drug, isn't it? Really, caffeine. But yeah, psychedelics have been an integral part of my recovery in various ways. I've been doing, microdosing mushrooms, macrodosing mushrooms for, since I, came down pretty hard with depression. But yeah, I mean, ayahuasca was the one that just changed everything for me. And now, I'm very fortunate that I support with music. I hold ceremonies with other people, at least a couple a month, and I guess it's a privilege that I've been blessed to be able to use music to help people heal and be part of serving the medicine, so other people can receive what I've received.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Do you find yourself noticing the same sort of signs that you saw in yourself in other cooks or younger cooks or something like that?
Yeah, one or two, instantly spring to mind. I think that people are very different, and generations are so different. I mean, one of the things my business partner and I talk about is how our very lovely team are just so much different. But throughout my career, there's always been a handful of people where I can see the person that I was in them. And maybe you gravitate towards them in some way, or maybe I open myself up a bit more for those people. I try and be as open as possible for everyone, but there is just this kind of natural gravitational pull for for certain people, and you just want to make sure that you're not projecting onto them, but at the same time just offering little bits of advice, and whether they want to take it or not, because I also understand that we've all got to make our own mistakes. We've all got to go on our own journeys. That is part of life as well.
For sure.
But if they want my advice, then I'm always around to offer a few nuggets of wisdom if I can. Yeah. That's really it. More so that I think sometimes just telling them the things that I'd love people to be as good as me, when it comes to cooking on fire. And it's just like, just mentoring people and saying, look, you should try it like this. You should try it. Like I said earlier on about the meditation with the
Yeah.
fire, just those little
Mhm.
bits and pieces. I wouldn't ordinarily just say that to everyone, but, I'll try
Yeah.
and tell them a few little bits that they might say, I didn't think that way. There's 25
Nice.
years
Yeah.
of like thinking like that. So I have that one.
Yeah. Yeah, something that also like struck me was that you said like what you got you out of the weeds was just working and focusing on the work, which I think also helped me as well, but also, kind of ruined a lot of things. Did you find that like for me, I was working a ton to get past this depression and feeling worthless and things like that, but then at work that would disappear. But then, like you said, you're distracting yourself. Do you feel like I don't really know what my question is actually? I just really related to that.
Yeah, no, it's
But
definitely something that's
it's good and bad to it was what I'm saying. Yeah,
it's like when people, ordinarily, well, people go down a certain route of getting rid of addictions, and then they find themselves, I don't know, addicted to being at the gym or running or doing something. You have
yeah,
to replace it, and as long as you're replacing these things with good things, things that are beneficial to you, then I don't think there's any real harm in the addiction still being there in that sense. Just that it's
yeah,
directing your energy to something else. Yeah, I remember it very clearly as just actually being at work. Then it absorbed me because I had a responsibility, and there is a voice at the back of your head that says, "Just keep going, keep doing this."
yeah. As
There
long
was
as you
that,
can keep going. Yeah,
yeah, there was that. But I put loads of quotes up, whether they were on my phone or on my wall. I put positive words around my flat, so I would draw my mind into positive language straight away, rather than London in the winter. It's tough. It's grey skies. It's wet. It's damp. But if I could just put some little nuggets or little quotes or things around that would inspire me, then that was another little bit to kind of boost me a bit. So with the Winston Churchill quote was, when you're going through hell, keep going. And that kind of resonated with me. I knew I was going through hell. I knew if I could get through it, it's these things aren't going to last forever. But where
yeah,
I was also, and that's the thing about depression, is you don't really know where you want to be or anything. It's just a real difficult place to function in any way.
yeah. It's really heavy.
It really is, yeah. So
Yeah,
you don't want to do anything good for yourself. And I
yeah,
guess it's mad. But as long as I'm getting up for other people, then that in turn will keep me busy, stop me getting in my own head. And as time starts helping and other things are, coming into your life to start helping, you're supported
yeah,
and you'll get through that. But you have to just be on kind of autopilot to just
yeah,
get through it, really.
yeah. There's also something that you mentioned earlier, which is that there's a benefit to working in kitchens, which is that you have a responsibility
Mm.
to other people. So if you can't get out of bed for yourself, then you can get out of bed for other people because you have work to do for them. You know what I mean? You sort of put the responsibility on other people for a little bit, and you say like, I'll do it for them because I can't do it for myself. But then eventually, hopefully, you'll get to the point where you're doing it for yourself. As you said, you're doing the work for yourself now. So
It's true. Yeah. I think there is that thing where, we do tend to want to look after other people or show up for other people and be there for other people, but we're not always good at looking after ourselves. And,
yeah,
you
especially
know,
cooks.
and,
Yeah,
and particularly in the service industry, I mean, fucking hell,
yeah.
chefs, we put beautiful food on the plate and then we go home and eat some shit,
Or
whatever's
don't
left.
eat at all.
Or don't eat at all, exactly. So
Yeah,
it's it's a strange thing we do, but I always feel. I mean, I done a load of. I set up a campaign for hospitality straight after I started talking openly about what I'd gone through at the end of 2016, and it was called Pilot Light. So it was a campaign really to just raise awareness in hospitality around mental health, and it was the first of its kind, really, because there was no one, when we were looking around for that support, there was no one doing it. So we realised that we had to do that. And now, luckily, there's a lot of places doing it in the UK, some initiatives, charities, lots and lots of things. So we we achieved what we set out to do. But I still do
That's great.
talks, and again through the medicine work, there is this thing where if we can build these foundations when we're in a good space, when we're clear-headed, when everything's going well, bring things into our life that if we hit crisis point again, and we only need a death of a loved one or a relationship breakup, or that
Yeah.
life is full of ups and downs, but it's just making sure we put all these things in place that when we're down, we can get up pretty quickly. Like I said, when you have depression, when you're in that space, you don't want to do anything. So it's better that you
Yeah.
don't do anything. You're just supported in other ways.
And what does that involve? Those safety nets, I guess you're
Well,
talking
do you know
about.
what? I have my thing that I've been talking about called my 12 pillars. And I encourage people to build their own pillars. But if I have 12, then I need 6 of them in my life at any one time. That's generally what it is. And maybe sometimes I'll move a few of them around. I always come back to this each year. I review what's good for me and what's not. But to roll a few off, meditation, nature, need to be in nature, going for walks in nature, exercise, good food, don't drink, don't read the news.
Yeah. Don't read the news. It's terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One of the ones I've recently put in there, which I really like, I just don't get to do it enough, is kind of ice baths. What else? I mean, obviously, friends, community. Uh, there's,
Oh,
there's a lot, and a lot of them are quite, really, it's common sense. There are things that we are as human beings. We need these connections.
yeah.
Vitamin D or being in the sun is a big one, and we don't get enough of
That's
that,
huge.
particularly if we're working in basement kitchens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they are important. They're important to us as human beings, and if we're disconnected from that, yeah, shit, we're going to feel bad as well. So I guess I've been able to line up my medicine work and what I do with that, with being able to offer it as a little bit of advice for anyone that's interested. But if anyone asks me how they're going to get through or get some longevity out of being a chef, then I think sometimes, yeah, just change the way you work, change the way you look after yourself outside of work.
Yeah. Well, that pretty much answers what my next question was, which is like, yeah, how do you keep doing the work? And
Yeah.
you pretty much just answered it. Yeah. All those little
It's
things.
that. It
Yeah.
is that. It's. But you have to still be inspired as well. Keep reading, keep looking at things, keep eating
Mhm.
out. Let other people inspire you, and then you'll want to continue as well. One of the things I discovered in lockdown, and I wish I'd have done that way earlier on in my career, was yoga. And I
Oh,
was
yoga's great.
it's
Yeah.
so good, but I discovered it in the first lockdown, and I was like, "Fuck!" I've always been fit, and I've always looked after myself through martial arts, but it's not really it's not really what yoga is, and I could have done that way earlier on. But you know what? I don't look at my career and my past, even the tough stuff I've gone through. I'm grateful for everything because it's made me who I am today, and I don't think I'd be that person if I'd have just been completely holistic at the start of it.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. It all helped build you who you are. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, yoga, if anything, is great for chefs because we don't stretch enough. We don't move enough. We don't really do much of anything aside from like moving from one, station to the other.
yeah,
And if you can start stretching as early as possible, you'll be better for it as a chef or anybody in restaurants. It's
completely,
paramount. Yeah.
completely. And
Yeah.
just if you learn a few kind of key exercises that you can do throughout the day, and even just a couple of yogic breathing techniques as well, that save
Mhm.
people a lot. We breathe up in the top of our lungs a lot, short, fast breaths instead of, deep breaths and getting things in. We'd be much calmer, we'd be way more focused. I'd see less people running off the line and jumping into their cars and going home in service.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just there's so much you can learn from kind of yoga and not just the stretching. But I think
Mm.
I do wish I had discovered it earlier. But I'm glad I have it in
Mhm.
my life now.
So, could you tell me a little bit more about the restaurant you're working on, or you're working in now, and sort of, you said
Yeah.
how a little bit how it came about, but kind of what are you guys doing there, and
Well, I guess going
what
back
makes
to
it
how
different
it
than
came
other
about.
restaurants, I guess, because you said you weren't going to go into a restaurant. What makes it this one different than, say, another restaurant that you felt you didn't want to be a part of?
Um, how is it different? Look, I think there's a few angles on it. I'd obviously been doing all the medicine work. I'd been, thinking deeply about what I do next, and I had a little epiphany in one of my journeys where it was just like, look, trust the plants. And wanted to do the live fire concept, but not be labeled as like barbecue. We're not doing any kind of
Oh yeah.
dude food. We have meat, we have fish, but we don't. We're not smoking too much stuff. It's more like a Mediterranean grill than it is like a US smokehouse of some kind.
Yeah.
And there are some great barbecue places in the UK and in London, but we're not that. And I just wanted to show how versatile cooking over fire can be. So um, we led with vegetables. That was the main thing. As 50% used to be 70%, but about 50% of the menu is completely plant based.
Yeah.
And while there was a period where I was definitely known for cooking meat over fire, and I wanted to just step away from that a little bit and just show how versatile vegetables can be. They have a greater textural range than any protein. They have a greater flavor profile than any protein. So but
Hmm.
they're not as unctuous, they're not as delicious, and I just wanted to see what we could do with vegetables to try and get them as tasty as meat could be, but while using the fire, the coals, cold smoking, hot smoking, embers, just playing around with all the different contraptions and things we've got, and taking each vegetable under its own merit, trying to get the best out of it. So that's what it is.
That's Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I didn't really know that that London had such great produce, but I guess it must if it has such amazing restaurants.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know everyone else's opinion of like British food and where we sit within the world, but there is great stuff, and there has always been great stuff. We've got some great chefs in the UK, and people
Yeah,
like Gordon
fantastic.
Ramsay is one of the best in the world. Our farming, while it's come under attack with things like foot and mouth, like 20 years ago, or mad cow, these are all bad farming practices. This is all part of the industrialized, farming complex. And yet, if we support regenerative farms, if we look to kind of little day boats that are around the south coast, or in the North Sea, getting fish hook and line, or in small nets. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
If we start supporting organically grown heirloom variety vegetables, small producers, then we find that the
yeah,
produce is amazing. It's just when we start going to supermarkets, or we start getting big bulk stuff that's come from a farm that just produces tons and tons of mediocre produce, like that's the problem, and that
mhm,
ends up in a lot of
yeah,
restaurants, and therefore people say, well, this tastes like shit. Yeah, no, fucking of course it does. And
yeah,
that was for us. We are ingredient led. We source hard. We support the food chain of where things come from. Yeah, if you do that, you're going to find great produce. And then when you got great produce, you don't really have to do too much to it. It's so easy.
yeah. That's true. Yeah, yeah, of course. So where do you guys see yourself going? Where do you see this new year for you guys and yourself personally?
We did a lot of events, outside events last year, and I still think it's a good angle for us to do. Instead of restaurant number two, maybe we just lean into events more. So we've got HQ, but we can take it on the road. So we'll be doing a few events, but it kind of broke us a bit last year because it was just so busy. So maybe not as many events, but quality rather than quantity.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's
we've got a
good.
couple of little brands that we're keen to launch in a much smaller kind of space than what we're currently in, and just see what works with that. But I think I'm not trying to put too much ahead. Say yes to a few collaborative events. I've got a handful of festivals that we'll be doing, but I'm also just like, maybe I'll leave it there. Or maybe we'll just wait for things to come along and not really push too hard on it. Because
Yeah.
the thing about our restaurant as well, it's a beast. It's such a busy space that I also feel that maybe when we were busy doing the events last year, we were kind of overlooking a few bits and pieces in the restaurant. So I don't want to step away too far from it at the moment until I know it's in a really good space.
Well, actually, let's circle back a little because I don't remember if you quite answered what makes this different. I guess mentally from another restaurant, because it sounds like an insanely busy restaurant and it's keeping you very busy. But why this concept in this restaurant instead of say another one?
Well, look, I'll reiterate on the thing. We're a live fire restaurant that is veg forward. That's the starting point of it. What's different? Why have I done this?
Like
we're completely
mentally,
self-funded.
I guess. Oh, okay.
We're
good.
completely self-funded as well. So we inherited an old wine bar that had quite a big outdoor area, and we borrowed a little bit of money from our business partners, which is like 30K, hardly anything, and that was
That's
just
nothing
enough to
for a
buy a new
restaurant.
grill, get some new
Yeah.
flooring put down, and because it's a joint venture with another friend of mine who has a brewery, it was him that put us onto it, and he just happened to have a little bit of a loan, a bounce back loan left over. So we used that money to get a new floor laid, get some crockery, get some a new grill, but it didn't go far, and that was it. Then we had to just start trading, and as we started getting busier, as we made some money, we started getting new things like new tables, new chairs, and it's almost complete, but it'll be 2 years in April since we launched. So it's like a nice slow journey. I don't have those worries that I would have had pre-pandemic, about paying an investor back or the bank. So that's a really big difference, and that's probably the only reason I've done this, or personally, is that we are self-funded in that sense.
You're working for yourself as opposed to some investor who's looking for
completely
cross profit and things. Yeah, that is a huge change. Yeah.
And it's just not, I think it was really exciting having people on that journey, telling people very honestly, which, we're not good at being honest. They're always trying to put out better PR so no one looks like, no one looks like they're in trouble or anything. It's just like, we were just like, look, this is it. Even though, that both Dan and I, as chefs, we've made names for ourselves in good places. When we took over that space, it wasn't what I think a lot of people might have been expecting, but being honest about it and saying, look, this is what we plan to do. This is what we've got at the moment. Come and see us next month. Come and see us the month after that. Every time you walk in that door, it's going to be a new restaurant. And just have fun with the journey. We started, when we started, we were serving on like palm leaf plates. It was very kind of DIY barbecue party feels
cool.
about it, until we could afford crockery. It was just, and I think even in the last couple of months, I can even turn up and something's new happening. We've just got a new roof. We've just had extraction even though the fires are outside, we've got some extraction to keep the neighbours happy. And it's a very, very different beast. So that makes it exciting. It makes it a place that I want to turn up to work every day. And I think it's down to me and my business partners to make sure it's a happy place for everyone, because I don't want to get caught up in the bullshit that I've done in the past. I've made those mistakes in the past about how we operate restaurants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like I mean, I could be wrong about this, but I feel like since the pandemic, people have sort of, because they have to pay back these loans and they're worried about their businesses closing and things, like we've sort of lost the honesty and fun of restaurants, especially like chef-led restaurants, where it's just like, it doesn't have to be this stuffy thing and you don't have to have all this PR and things to desperately get people in the door. It can just be a little more lighthearted. And I think people would appreciate that a lot more than just something that's so like, has an image built up about it. You know what I mean?
Completely. Yeah,
Yeah.
listen, we
So,
all, as restaurants and all businesses, we're going through tough times at the moment. And
yeah,
particularly in the
of
UK, I
course.
don't know how it compares with the States, but, the cost of living crisis here, there are
Oh,
fewer people coming out.
yeah.
So
Same here.
we know we're all in a bad boat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
let's be honest, that's what's happening. How do we navigate through that? And we're doing it. I think we're doing it.
Yeah.
We try and lean on. We've
Exactly.
got sauces and condiments that we're trying to bring to market at the moment. We have our own little ferment laboratory.
Cool.
That
Oh, yeah.
we make lots of ferments and misos and pickles and things, but we lean on waste and byproducts and things. We're next to a brewery and we're also next to a bakery, plus our own daily kind of waste that we can turn into things. So there's that, and we hope to bring that to market soon. And then we also have a lot of merch, which we
Oh,
want to bring into more of like a lifestyle wear to just encourage people to be outside with their barbecues and their grills all year round.
yeah.
So, we do have fun with it. There's a few little angles that we can go to be more than just a restaurant.
Hmm.
I guess it's that thing, isn't it? That while I'm optimistic that something like the pandemic won't happen again, there's always a chance that it could. So,
Yeah.
how
It's
do we
true.
pivot quicker if it does? So that
That's
was
true.
it. Building something that was more, I guess it was building a brand rather than building a restaurant. That's what I would do.
Yeah. That's true. Well, I'll leave it with this, but I've struggled with depression and a lot of addictive personality traits and stuff like that, and also working in kitchens, having that work being as tough as it is, and I will say one of the biggest things, which I think you are a huge part of, is being honest about your addictions and your depression and stuff, and not holding it inside. Like I always use the example Bourdain that he held in so much, and all it takes is just being honest about it and talking about it, even if you don't have the solutions.
Yeah.
It makes such a huge difference. So I just want to say thank you for that. I really appreciate that. So
Thanks, brother. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on and telling your story. I really appreciate it.
All right, Zach. Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
Yeah. And you also have a podcast as well. I want to give you an opportunity to shout that out. You just started one, right?
Yeah, we've got one. Again, we started it originally in the pandemic. And we did about 8 episodes with friends, mostly chefs, but people kind of connected with food and stuff. But it was short-lived, 8 episodes. Things got busy after that, and it was only earlier last year that I just said to my business partner with Pilot Light, who I did it with originally, and we just said, look, I just miss having these catch-ups, because every time we catch up, it's like, how are you? What's been happening? And we chat and chat and chat, and we think, fuck, we should have recorded that. So
yeah,
this is really us just when we catch up. We try and do it weekly, but we're also chefs and we get pulled apart a bit. It's really that. It's just like, let's talk about the things that are inspiring us, the things that we're bringing in our lives. It's not a mental health podcast. It's just, I guess it goes back to the 12 pillars that I was talking about earlier on. It's just, let's talk about good things. Let's talk about what we're eating. Let's talk about ice baths and psychedelics and all those little bits and pieces. Because, if an episode can help one person, then, I'd like to think that it's worth us catching up and talking.
Yeah, of course. What is it called then? Where can people find it?
It's called Skull Session Podcast, and you should be able to find it on Apple Music, Spotify. I think it's even on Audible. But yeah, look for it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chef. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk and tell your story.
Cheers, Zach. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have a good day, man.